This one's wife. Look at this skanky hoe. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. There are many people who often refer to this one's wife by utilising labels that are associated with a description of somebody who receives payment for the provision of sexual services. This has arisen as a consequence of differing beliefs. First of all, there are those that maintain that she once occupied a position, or you might argue lots of different positions, as a yacht girl. This being the euphemistic description for a young woman who would make herself available on yachts for a period of time for a fee and associated gifts in lieu, whereby she would provide companionship, a girlfriend experience, and sexual services to older men. This is a persistent rumour that has existed in relation to this one's wife, with evidence of varying degrees of credibility being offered in support of it. It is often the case that this is mentioned in relation to her knowing Andrew Mountbatten Windsor prior to meeting him through her marriage into the royal family. The fact that she was alleged to have engaged in these behaviours have caused people to reference her as a prostitute. There are others that maintain that this appellation is appropriate as a consequence of how she came to meet Harry, that she was utilised through Soho House and her handler, stroke pimp, Marcus Anderson, as a way to get claws into high net worth and influential individuals for the purposes of then milking that introduction financially to the benefit of this one's wife and Anderson. The suggestion has been that rather than the two meeting on a date, as is the tale that is advanced by this one's wife and Harry, that in actual fact it was organised for her to be hooked up with him through Soho House as an escort, and that he was going to give her a good rattling, and therefore, as a consequence of what occurred, Harry found himself compromised and put in a position whereby either he could not continue to resist her ongoing charms, she lets you do anything that you want, or that certain material was obtained that forced him into a position of entering marriage with her following the mistake that he made in respect of the initial liaison. Again, her involvement with Soho House and the connection with Marcus Anderson causes people to believe that in effect she was operating as an escort from there. The third nature of why people describe her as such is less to do with the fact that she may well have been involved in the provision of sexual services in the receipt of funds, but just to do with her overall presentation and how she in effect prostitutes herself in order to social climb and use men. In other words, the term of prostitution is used in a looser sense, that she harnesses a degree of attraction, flirtatiousness, the bearing of skin, the operation of loose morals as a means to inveigle her way into relationships with men, which may later become intimate, for instance, with Trevor Engelson, with Corey Vitiello, also with Harry. But the way that she has behaved in a fashion that is not particularly becoming. Many people point to the way that she dresses inappropriately, the way that she's overly flirtatious with people, the way that she's overly tactile in the way she's dealing with individuals, the way that she, for instance, stared at Prince William as if she was sizing him up as a tasty new morsel, the way that she behaved in relation to Serena Williams' husband, the way that she behaved with the Colombian vice president's husband and such like, that all of these behaviours point to her behaving like a skanky hoe, one that doesn't care about how people are affected by her behaviour, the way that she always inserts herself into situations, the way that she's actually quite a grubby individual, She has, see parts pass him, acquired a reputation for being somewhat unhygienic, both in terms of having a whiff about her, but also has been repeatedly seen with regard to her failings in the kitchen. And all of that, leaving aside any suggestion of whether there has been any provision of sexual services for money, if we assume that never took place, there's an overall image associated with this one's wife whereby she comes across as grimy, not particularly clean, not particularly savoury, that she's ill-mannered, that she sharpens her elbows, that she trades on sex even with not necessarily providing it, and then doing so in the context of a relationship that all makes for her being something of a skanky hoe. As you can see from the thumbnail, we have had the instances in the past whereby she has posed with her legs that supposedly go on for miles with that ridiculous floppy hat, that she did the atrocious burger flipping advertisement for Men's Health, where she sought to convince us all that she was some kind of sexy, the Deal or No Deal briefcase girl, the appearance in lingerie in Suits, the sexy scenes of giving a blowjob in 90210, and the repeated instances of pictures that appeared on the internet where she has been seen topless and appearing with shades and that hat once again as part of her yacht girl activities. Despite the attempts to scrub the internet of much of the evidence that demonstrates her skankiness, there's plenty that has maintained, and also there is this general behaviour associated with her that suggests that she's not particularly clean, both literally and metaphorically, and that she's a bit of a skank. Well, more evidence of this has popped up. Have a look at this. This is a picture that was located by someone called Pedro-esque, it's fair to give credit, who posted it on the Saint This One's Wife subreddit. As you know, they use a full name, I do not, under the title Little Ms. Grimy. And apparently the posting was accompanied by this text. According to the latest reports, Frogmore Cottage was the last straw as Madam wanted a palace. Where does an entitlement come from, considering this is how she was used to living before she became Duchess of Doom? Grimy, dirty, likely roach-infested kitchen from her struggling days. Found this gem on X. And as you can see, this picture that was found on X shows her apparently doing some baking in a rather unpleasant-looking kitchen. Now, before we get on to the analysis of the picture, Pedro-esque asked, where does her entitlement come from? Well, you all know it comes from her narcissism. That is what drives her to believe that she should receive the best, the most money, the best accommodation, the largest jewels, the biggest crown, the most expensive dresses, the biggest security support, all of those things, because her narcissism tells her that she's amazing and important and that she is the centre of the universe. Thus, that's where her entitlement comes from. Understandably, Pedro-esque would think to themselves, you look at this picture of her in her struggling days, where she's in a rather grimy kitchen with an unclean oven, and then she thinks that she should have had a palace. Really? Well, of course she would do, because her narcissism tells her as such. But in this picture, what is interesting is that once again you see the showmanship of her grandiosity as a narcissist being exhibited. Rather than have any sense of shame that she's in a rather dingy, grubby kitchen, oh no, here she is posing. She's the hostess with the mostess, wearing a shirt that's undoubtedly unbuttoned to her navel, leaning in, making sure she's eye-fucking that camera, arse pointing towards the air, feet together. Who on earth opens an oven like that? Nobody does. Who on earth would decide that they want to pose for a picture by an oven like this? Most people wouldn't, but this one's wife does. Produce a camera and all of a sudden, into action she goes, staring down the lens, pouting for it, adjusting her body in as a provocative pose as she can muster, whilst supporting 7 what look like cookies, either going in or coming out of the oven. Difficult to tell, don't really care. As she attempts to muster sexiness, sultriness, evocative poses in a dingy, grimy kitchen. You all know that she does this because her narcissism compels her to do so, that she's so performative that whoever took this photograph, immediately she tries to conjure up sex because she's a somatic narcissist. Rather than perhaps look a little bit warm and be mopping her brow, looking a little bit frustrated perhaps with how the cookies are going, perhaps smiling and laughing at being caught in the moment of baking. No, not for this one's wife. Her narcissism treats this as an opportunity to display the goods. Look at me, my derriere poked into the air, ready for insertion. Here I am, with an expectant look in my eyes. Oh, monsieur, you have caught me while I am in the kitchen. You must come and ravish me immediately. The film, as ever, rotating in her mind as, irrespective of the fact that she's got an unclean oven, a dingy kitchen, and for some strange reason a poster which has been framed above her head, all of that is ignored as she wants to pose, wants to perform because her narcissism demands it. And it just conjures up another reason why so many people regard her as a skanky hoe. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for watching.